so good to see you. It's been a couple years. But I think about you all the time, man. You're out there. You have more energy. You are more relentless than almost anybody I've ever met. It's crazy. You were just saying you're doing how many lectures?
I got 200 cities, and sometimes one lecture per city.
200 cities.
Sometimes two, different cities in the same day. Over 10 months. Yeah.
So when people say, I'd really like to eat better, but I travel too much.
Right.
Nobody travels as much as you do. I don't think I've ever met anybody who travels as much.
Well, but it's just, I'm on like a 3-year book cycle, so it's only 1 out of 3 years. So I write a book a year, then I'm on the road for a year, but then I got to write 3 years worth of videos for Nutrition Facts, then I write the next book.
So do you whiteboard that all out in advance, so you know what your books are down the line and all of that?
Yeah, to like 2042 or something.
Right.
Like that, yeah.
And how do you apportion that? So you have all the videos coming out on Nutrition Facts.
Right.
You got the books, you got the lectures, you're never home, and when you are home, you're on a walking desk. Like, how does this work?
Yeah. No. So people were like, oh, I love the video. How'd you do the video today? You were in a plane. As if, I'm like, it's like real time.
I did that video a year ago.
Literally, right? So I script 3 years worth of videos every 3 years. And so you just hope and pray that broccoli's still good for you next year because, it's set in stone.
Has that ever happened where the science has changed and you had to pull the video?
Yeah. I mean, usually there's even stronger evidence, or in the same kind of direction, but now we finally have something that really clinches it.
Yeah.
More than anything else. But
well, you were one of my very first guests on this show, episode 7, I think, going all the way back. Then we did a second one where there was a technical snafu. We were at some conference and we did it, and it didn't record. That's only happened like 3 or 4 times in 7 years, but you fell victim to that.
Another trendsetter. I know, I tell you.
And then the last time that we did this, I think, was 4 years ago. So it seems like yesterday, because you're in my heart all the time. What is the current lecture all about? Because I know you're constantly up. Do you change it for every audience, or you have kind of a lockdown thing that you do every year?
Yeah. So I used to do a new talk every year because I was traveling every year, but now I'm only traveling after the new book. So I just have the new book talk, and so for new audiences they get the last book talk. But for audiences who've already seen it, the How Not to Die talk, I give the How Not to Diet, the weight loss talk. That's what I'm doing now.
So this is the new.
Right. I actually like the old one. I mean, so the last talk, How Not to Die talk, is my favorite talk. I mean, it just has more humor than any other talk. I mean, so my preference, and it's like perfectly memorized. Like I can think about my grocery list while I'm giving it. Like, I mean, it's just like completely right. But it's so. And the new. I'm reading off the notes on the podium. And it's going to be a while before. And just when I get really good at it.
It's like a stand-up comedian. You tape your special, and then you got to retire the material.
It's all over.
But in your case, this material it has a longer shelf life, though. This stuff doesn't necessarily age.
It's crazy. So How Not to Die is selling better now than it did the month after release back in like 2016.
I mean, it sold over 750,000 copies, right?
Yeah, about that.
And 100% of all proceeds go to charity.
Charity for all my books,
We're talking a lot of money.
Yeah, this last one. I donated more than $1 million this year. Wow. Yeah, very good.
And I would suspect that a big part of that, other than just being, compassionate in your heart, is to basically rebut the argument that you're conflicted. You're selling a book, so you're anchored in this position, and no matter what the evidence says, you've got to toe this line because you're financially incentivized.
Right. Although there's still the ideological kind of conflicts of interest. So even people that aren't necessarily profiting off of their work, I mean, they still may be wedded to some idea. So it doesn't completely divorce me from the concern or bias. But yeah, I mean, there's so much the corrosive corruption of commercial influences.
Well, let's talk about that.
Within, medicine in general, but nutrition in particular, where the confirmation bias is just so extreme, and no one feels you've ever seen such a thing.
it's pretty bananas right now. I feel like there's a mushroom cloud of information. Like if you're in the Twitter sphere, it's insane. The siloed, kind of tribal wars that are going on right now are so emotional and acerbic. It's quite toxic. So how do you? I mean, you post your stuff. I've noticed like you don't engage in any of that. You kind of just stay above the fray.
Yeah. No, and that was a conscious decision to be like, well, this is all the science that I could find on this, and so and so the only you'll notice on nutrition facts, the only comments I respond to is, what about this study, or what about this study, and because it's very possible maybe I missed that study. We got a huge research staff now, but I want to make sure that I put that into the calculus when I came out with what I consider the best available balance of evidence. And so it's like, this is the science. So there's really nothing anyone can say. And it's really not like, most of my videos I try really hard to be like, I have no opinion on this. Here's the science. Make up your own mind. I mean, it convinced me to do X, Y, and Z, but if you're not convinced by the evidence, wait till
right.
something else.
Well, you must get the criticism that you're cherry picking studies. Like you have to make a decision about what studies you're going to highlight in these videos, right?
So that's why I test my program, because I have to make sure. So not just some new study, but where that new study exists in the context of every other study that's ever been published ever. Right? I mean,
so many studies get published a year.
Well, I mean, so just
like legitimate.
So in obesity, just in the field of obesity, there's over 100,000 studies. So that's like, so it's like, I go to sleep and I'm already like, I'm way behind.
You do sleep.
I'm working on it. But
you talk about that in the new book.
I know.
Do you practice that?
It is so depressing to look at sleep medicine literature because I just realized, that horrible thing's gonna happen to me.
This is the one blind spot in your regimen.
But I mean, I find myself I'm so much less productive when I'm unconscious.
So 1,000 studies a year on obesity alone.
100,000.
100,000. Oh my God. So how do you even wade through this and figure out, what's worth looking at, and what's really worth exploring and digging into, and ultimately, I would imagine deconstructing at times to figure out what holds up to your standards and what doesn't.
Yeah. So we have over 100 research volunteers that churn through. That's how we can get to tens of thousands of studies per year. Just because we have all these retired docs that are just sitting around. Just have a hobby of helping me out, basically. And so at any one time, we have 200 volunteers. And so I mean, we can just churn through so much, and I have access. I have people in libraries, in every major library anywhere, who will pull any study from any. So I have someone that will just go to the NIH, largest medical library in the world, and pull any gold study that's even online. So I have access to everything, and just in this incredibly privileged position to be able to, But that's assuming the literature all says one thing.
Right.
The problem with the reason why this new obesity book, the weight loss book, was such a bear, the hardest thing I've ever taken on in my life, was because it's incredibly conflicting. And so, if 100 studies say one thing, and others 100 studies say another thing, you have to say, well, wait a second, what is it about the way they did the studies, the populations, the exclusion criteria, and what was it that you could arrive at such disparate conclusions using very similar kind of methods? And that for so simple questions like skip breakfast or not skip breakfast, and exercise before or after a meal, or these these are 1,000 article research questions. There's 1,000 articles on, and you're just like, wait a second, this is 2 pages of the book, maybe it's a little sidebar, and it's all. People
just want to know: should I eat breakfast or shouldn't I?
And I get a
should
lot
I
of
fast.
I get a lot
Tell
of
me
that
what to
feedback.
do.
That's what everyone's like. Okay,
I don't care.
Like
just give me the thing.
I know. Be my guru, right? That's the antithesis of what I want to. That's the problem. Is people just just follow what someone says, and as if you were born with this knowledge. I mean, when it comes to something as life and death important as the way to feed yourself and your family, then if there's anything any decision we should make based on evidence, it should be something like that. If you're online buying a toaster, then the random opinions of strangers may actually be really useful. Like, oh, I like this one. Okay, but when I was in practice, and someone came and I said, why are you eating this particular? Someone at the gym told me to, eat this way. I'm like, really? I mean, the checkout aisle magazine is the reason that you're feeding your kids. I mean, you realize that what we eat is the #1 cause of death and disability in the United States. I mean, the most important decision we make is what we put in our mouth. And so if there's any decision that should be built based on evidence, we should demand evidence, and not just a citation, but show me the evidence. I want to see it for myself to make sure you didn't take it out of context. I mean, this is, and so that's.
But you and I both know well that even the most well-intentioned consumer who begins to explore this, whether online or whatever, they're going to find conflicting information out there, and it appears to have equal merit. It's like when you turn on the news and there's 10 people yelling at each other at the same time. Even if one of them is completely Looney Tunes, it appears that they're standing on equal footing, right? So, you can find studies that will support whatever perspective or confirmation bias that you have, and it becomes very difficult for that well-meaning, intelligent person to separate, the chaff from, the cream when it comes to this. So this is where you come in, but even then, it's like, all right, well, you're sifting through thousands and thousands of these studies and realizing, well, this is complicated, and even good science seems to conflict. How do you make heads or tails of that? I can't judge somebody who's like, Dr. Greger, just like, what is it? Tell me, give me the thing.
Yeah, no, you don't check. It's like that. And there's lots of problems with the, peer-reviewed medical literature. It's like that, Winston Churchill actually said it, but attributed to Winston Churchill, democracy, worst form of government, except for all the others, right? And it's the same thing. It's like the peer-reviewed scientific literature. It's the best we have. I mean, it's the worst we have, except for all the others. I mean, that's what else can we do but abide by, what's been, published in medical literature? But there's lots of problems with industry bias, funding effects, and so that's why you really need. The first thing I do when I look at a study, where's it coming from? Just read it with that lens. Doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad study.
Exactly, it can still be a good study.
Still be a good study. But you want to read it with that, you want to take it with extra special grain of salt and look at the methods and really make sure they didn't create this, they didn't produce the study in a way to get some desired result. They were actually coming in really, learn something.
And despite the fact that you've read countless thousands of these studies, I mean, you've been on board with the whole food plant-based diet for decades at this point. Do you ever come across a study that contravenes some long-held truth that you've held? Like, have you ever had to update your thoughts on things? Like, how is that evolution been?
Yeah, no, look, I mean, anyone who's saying the same thing about nutrition that they were saying a few years ago obviously hasn't been keeping track of literature. I mean, the reason I can do videos every day forever is just there's this tremendous wealth of information out there. Now, usually it's just kind of nibbling at the edges, like after How Not to Die came out, I realized, I'm telling people, you gotta toast your walnuts and sesame seeds, and your cheese smells so wonderful, that's great, it's wonderful. Then this paper came out and talked about these AGEs, these advanced glycation end products, these glycotoxins found in high-fat, high-protein foods exposed to high dry heat temperatures. Traditionally, it's like flamethrowers and stuff, chicken McNuggets, but nuts, you put them at those temperatures. So now I eat the raw nuts, but that's the nice thing about a video, where it's like an update as opposed to the book, which is already out, but, but I mean, there's little things like
these are like
details. But I mean, you can find studies all the time saying, bacon butter is good for you, just like the tobacco lobby would come literally with piles of studies to these congressional hearings. Say this is not the research that says smoking is neutral. is the literature saying smoking is good for you? It helps with Parkinson's disease and ulcerative colitis. And a lot of this is true because it's immunosuppressive, it's an autoimmune disease. You smoke, you kill your immune system, your autoimmune disease gets better, inflammatory bowel disease gets better. But I mean, these are legit studies showing smoking beneficial. Now, of course, that's not the best of the balance of evidence because horrific death from lung cancer. But those studies exist, and you can cherry pick them out, and that's why every day a video comes out, I send the video to every single principal investigator of every article I cite, and be like, here's your research, in hopes that one will be like misinterpreted or whatever, and I can immediately,
Right. So when you get, like, what is your response when somebody criticizes you and says he's just, he's a plant-based guy, he's always going to be a plant-based guy, he's got his own confirmation bias. This is a guy who's really just an animal rights activist who's shrouded himself in a medical form.
I mean, it's like some pulmonologist saying, you're just an anti-cigarette guy. I mean, your only reason you're telling people not to smoke is because, you have a well-known record of you were against cigarettes 10 years ago. Before this study comes out, a new study comes out saying smoking's bad for you. Mr. Anti-Cigarettes is at it again. I mean, the science is the science. And, the charges of cherry picking. So, for example, only one diet ever proven to reverse heart disease in majority of patients with plant-based diet. Number one killer of men and women. Like, can be the default diet to prove that way? Only one. So it's hard to cherry pick when there's only one cherry. Like, there's no other. Now, in the future, maybe some new diet will be shown to. But I mean, until that happens, and this happens over and over again with multiple sclerosis, Crohn's disease, and on down the list, nothing's been shown to work better. And there's just, so.
Right. I mean, listen, you said it, but the fact that heart disease, basically kills more people than anything else, and this is the one protocol that actually will not only prevent it, but reverse it if you have it. Like, why are we even exploring anything further? And so it's amazing that it's so controversial.
And the fact that can also help prevent or reverse other leading killers, diabetes and high blood pressure. You seem to make the case with plant-based eating just simply overwhelming it. Right? I mean, if there's one thing you need to know, number one killer of men and women, only diet ever proven to reverse in the majority of patients, plant-based diet. So the only way that wouldn't argue for it being the default diet for everyone is if it so dramatically increased risk of, killers 2 through 15 or something, such that it would overwhelm the heart disease benefit, and instead you tend to see a benefit in neutral effects.
Right. Well, you've got to be thrilled to see this movement, this way of eating and living, kind of explode over recent years. I mean, never before in your career, have we seen such a crazy adoption rate, which is super exciting. But there's also a lot of pushback now, and we have these sort of other diets that are rising to the surface and challenging for their moment in the sun. And it makes me realize, or I guess appreciate, just how emotional all of this is. It's really not an information war as much as it is a psychological war. You know what I mean? Like, because you've spent decades putting information out. I mean, nobody puts out more information about this than you do. And if somebody's resistant to that, that's their choice. But I feel like the battle really needs to be waged on how to win hearts and minds. Not just the minds, but the hearts. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm interested in, whether you have thought about this, with respect to the newest book. It's like weight loss, like everybody wants to lose weight, right? But often it's not the information, it's the implementation of the information, and what gets in the way of people taking that information and putting it into action has to do with their own psychological makeup and, the emotional landscape and, the social construct in which they live their lives.
When I, at some of these, amazing plant-based nutrition healthcare conferences now attract thousands of, it's just amazing. The number one question I have for everyone is like, how did you come across it? Like, obviously you didn't learn about it in in medical school. None of us did. Like, how did you? And most frequently, the answer I get is because a patient taught them. Like, so they've had these patients forever, and they've known their whole families. And they've had diabetes, and they're just trying to slow the rate at which they go blind and lose their kidney function and lower limbs. And then all of a sudden they come in, they're trying to get lighter, they need to, they're dramatically over medicated. All of a sudden they have to pull back all the drugs, and the doctor's like, what happened? And the patient says, oh, I saw knives or game changers or something. And then all of a sudden, and the doctor in the back of the mind, doctor's saying, I've got like 2,000 patients just like you. What is going on? And that's so, and so
It's
just
great, but it's upside down.
oh my God! And so it drives me crazy. And so I'm like, wait a second. I've got a stack this big of peer-reviewed scientific literature, randomized controlled trials proving reversal of these diseases. Yet it was one little anecdote. One person comes to you, and then all of a sudden, but it's that human connection. We're like storied creatures. Like all the data in the world, some people are open to that. But other people, they just need to see it in front of their face. So I don't know. So that's why I think the more popular, it's the easier when they see the friends and family, the transformations, then it'll click that. And of course, I'll be in the background banging my head against the wall saying,
Right. Hello.
Here's this the 70s, right?
Yeah.
Pinnacle was at reversing heart disease in the 70s. How many people have died since then needlessly? Over 100,000 people every year in the United States alone. That much suffering, it should anger people, right? I mean, the reaction to someone who just doesn't have to go through open heart surgery anymore shouldn't be relief. Oh my God, I don't have to get my chest cracked open, and now I get to live a long, happy life and see my grandkids grow up. It should be like, why didn't anyone tell me this before?
Right.
I mean,
Outrage.
Yeah.
Of these 200 cities that you visit, all the speeches that you give, how many of them are at medical schools or hospitals? Because obviously, like, the way to get to the root of this is to educate medical students and create a better ecosystem around care.
Yeah, train the trainers. That's really what I'm doing now. Is mostly talking to professional audiences. I'm talking tonight at a medical center, and lots of medical schools now. And that's how I actually started out. My kind of speaking career is going. In fact, that was my goal: speak every single medical school every 2 years to hit every single new grad coming out and have a whole new generation of docs learning this. But I realized, like, that's too slow. Like, they're still going to be in training for another 5 years, and then they got to get out, and then so like people are dying now. When it comes to safe, simple, side effect-free solutions like stop smoking, eat healthier, you don't need your doctor to tell you to do that. We can take this directly to the people with this kind of democratization of information now available. And so so then that's how nutritionfacts.org got more.
Right.
Instead of forget the doctors, let them come around eventually. We gotta, right? People are dying right now. People need to know. And then, of course, it's up to you. It's your body, your choice. You want to go smoke cigarettes? Why don't you jump and do whatever you want? But at least we should be, educated about predictable consequences of your actions.
Other than your unbridled enthusiasm for this, one of the things that I like about you and that's interesting about you is that you really strive to stand outside of dogma, and you're not telling people what to do. You're basically in a very objective way presenting the information and allowing people to do with it as they will.
Yeah, I mean that's always been really important. And look, and for whatever reason, there's no judgment. I mean, I happen to have the background that enabled me to do this work and to be who I am. I mean, there are people struggling with all sorts of things that you don't know about, and the fact that they're still eating, crap on their home, way home from work. I mean, you have no idea what's going on with their life that led them to whatever. But should they have the opportunity to really, whether it's a health scare or whatever, to be like, I really need to clean up my act, at least there should be a place that we go, here's the information. This is what I wish I learned about in school, and, do it.
Geek out on nutrition I mean, how many hours of videos do you have on there now?
So we have thousands plural, so we have over 2,000 videos.
Basically, you go to the site and you can just search whatever food or whatever ailments, and you've got it covered.
Yeah.
Ever run out of
No, but it's
what's the new video gonna be?
Oh, there's always new stuff. I'm constantly. I mean, there's just always new. And so I do it two ways. I run through all the topics actually alphabetically. Anyone who's keeping real close attention will be like, oh, so the olive oil came after the nuts, which came after
Yeah.
And then I just go through and read every issue and every single institution throughout the world to see, because there may be topics I don't even know to look up. There's just, all sorts of new hormones, receptors, and I was just working on the plane on this CD36 receptor. Whoa, blew my mind! Videos to be cut. The videos to come, right?
We get sidetracked on that. It sounds like It sounds like a airplane to me, like a C-130.
Right.
I don't even know what that is.
Oh my God, amazing!
In terms of taking it to the people, which you've been doing, the real needle mover, I think, has been this slew of documentaries that have come out over the last decade. The most recent of which is, of course, Game Changers, and you were the scientific, technical advisor on that movie, right?
Yeah.
So what did that look like? What was your involvement?
Certainly, to take that first point, when I go around speaking, I ask people in these 4-hour book signing lines, how these books are now, these documentaries are now just really, tremendous, oversized effects.
Right.
And so people, if they're funders interested in getting this, movement off the ground, I think that's a decent way to go.
Yeah, well, they're probably good investments. These movies do very well.
They do, and they
you know?
do. So I was approached by James Wilkes, several years ago. When he was just an idea, and interviewed me for some on some highway in Santa Rosa or something, and this noisy like a little whatever, like a little camcorder-y kind of thing in a hotel. And it was just an idea, but you can't say no to any opportunity, right? So like, Floyd still kicking himself, not being full. So kind of, I'm like, it's gonna be in everything. I hope something helps. So then he actually started to get some momentum for the film, and invited me back. Said, "Sorry, we got a lot of things right. It's back first. Now we actually have real cameras. All right. So then we do another thing, and it actually happened once or twice more. And then we're like, okay, now we really have money. Now we have like the fancy. So I went through and then of course I get cut out completely from the film, which is fine. I wouldn't replace a second of it. I think it's so perfect. But hopefully I'll be in some DVD extra or something down the road. But the role I could play instead was to fact check because I have an army. I mean that's what we do.
You're the perfect person for that.
Yeah. And we actually behind the scenes and open invitation to anyone writing a book, producing a film, TV show, anything. Come to me. I'll do it for free. Our whole team. I mean, it's so important to me that we don't say ridiculous stuff and people throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, the movement has said just ridiculous, crazy stuff, exaggerated stuff. I mean, what? I mean,
it doesn't help the movement to do that.
Right,
because it imperils the credibility.
And if you have, as if we have to exaggerate anything, we should use the industry estimates for everything. The most low ball, it's only 1,500 gallons per pound of beef, whatever, water, according to the National Academy of Beef Association, or whatever. I mean, that's what, it boggles the mind. So, that's so critical. So a lot of the books that are written up, as long as we will do it, as long as they're willing to actually.
Right. So your job was really vetting all the science, so that there was no exaggerations, and that everything that was said and every scene kind of met the scientific muster.
In fact, conservative. So not just sticking to the consensus, but like on the conservative side of anything, let's not see anything. The science is so strong, we don't need to exaggerate. We don't need to go anywhere but beyond the solid ground.
Right, and the whole erectile dysfunction sequence was your brainchild. So walk us through that.
I had the data, I had the science, but again, you need to make the science relatable. I could show a graph, a table, an amazing table with a statistical significance that alone would give you an erection, but. That's not going to move visual
That's
audience.
not cinematic.
It's not cinematic. And so they kept asking, how do we make it visual? How do we make it alive? And so So I said, let's do the lactescence, the cloudiness of fat after eating a meal and the serum. And I knew just from reading the literature on blood flow and endothelial function that they had these Rigiscan machines with a name like Rigiscan. It's got to be good. And now it's actually being done legit. I mean, in a real study. In fact, I think by Osfeld. Dr. Osfeld is now has the funding. He's actually going to put it to the test in really, tightly controlled, randomized fashion with folks. But again, it was just they wanted to show the example.
Right.
Yeah, but
so latest book, How Not to Diet. How dare you write a book about weight loss? I can't believe this, right? So How Not to Diet is really about sort of tackling, preventing, reversing the sort of top ailments, chronic ailments that people suffer from. But of course, obesity is an ailment in and of itself, or a contributor to a variety of ailments, right? So without sort of confronting obesity head on, you're not really getting, you're not going to move the needle for people, right? So you got to get them to lose weight. Right?
So I did So How Not to Die, 15 leading causes of death. 1 through 15 chapter on each, talking about people die. So there's a type 2 diabetes chapter, obviously, but never took obesity on directly, and it really required its own time. So
So you have to then turn your focus into how to help people lose weight, right? Like, what is the science of weight loss? And I would imagine, you had to you confront like a lot of things that we sort of assume or take for granted that perhaps maybe didn't turn out to be true, like calorie in, calorie out, or 3 meals a day, or what there's so much conventional wisdom around, like, here's how you lose weight, ABC. So by immersing yourself in all of this research, like, what surprised you the most, or what did you discover that perhaps you didn't expect?
Yeah, so in both ways, some of the conventional wisdom actually has a real scientific basis, and only recently does it have a real scientific basis. So for years we've just been talking out of our butt, but now, it's actually true. We should, breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, dinner like a pauper kind of thing. Some of this, or drink water before a meal, very common kind of thing. Now we actually have science, and it really does show beneficial effects. But I think the biggest challenge for me, just because this is not my field. I mean, I just know from what I learned in med school, and this concept that a calorie is a calorie, right? A calorie from one source is just as fattening as a calorie from any other source. And this is kind of a troll broadcast by the food industry to kind of resolve itself culpability, but it's just not true. Like 100 calories of chickpeas has a different effect on body weight than 100 calories of chicken or chicklets, based on absorption, based on fiber content, based on all sorts. And even if you absorb the same amount, even a calorie may still not be a calorie. It depends when you eat it, in what context you eat it, how fast you eat it, all sorts. That just kind of exploded, like my concepts of kind of like I learned in med school. Sort of like this chronobiology, a whole chapter on
Right.
all the circadian
Walk us
rhythm.
through this, because I'd never heard anything about this.
Well, so what I had known, what we learned about in medical training is it's called chronotherapeutics, where if you give chemotherapy at the right time of day, you actually have fewer side effects, and it's more effective than giving it at a different time of day. Same dose, same drug, which is fascinating. But I hadn't taken it to the logical conclusion. What about chronoprevention? Might exercise and sleep patterns and meal patterns also play a role if it has such a dramatic effect? And indeed, calories eaten in the morning are less fattening than the exact same food eaten fewer calories after sundown, the better. So they do these studies.
How is that? Why is that?
Well, it's because, so for example, in the morning, your body has to make glycogen stores for the rest of the day, and instead of just using the energy, if you take the little chains of sugars and starches and make them the glycogen in your muscles and liver, that's an energy-intensive process, and then you break it back down to be used later on. And so the fact that you're using energy to basically get the energy right back, this kind of energy-intensive process is one of the small reasons why eating in the morning, when your body's knows it's got a whole day ahead of it, what exactly is going on. But everything from body temperature to testosterone to cortisol levels, everything, goes on this wild thing. It's like, and then there's seasonal cycles. Weight loss, it's the weight you put on in the kind of winter months for the holidays may have the role
Depends upon how far the Earth is from the sun.
It's crazy, right? The rotation. So that was, that just blew me away. So you can put people on 2,000 calories, exact same 2,000 calories as one meal at breakfast or one meal at supper. The Army did this, the evening group, same calories, gains weight, and the breakfast group loses weight.
Such a trend.
It's crazy. And so then that really opened my eye. Well, okay, well now anything's possible. So then really kind of dug deep and came up with just what are the criteria for optimum weight loss? What would the optimum weight loss diet look like from kind of the ground up? Just because originally, not to diet, it was going to be a chapter on each of the latest diet trends, and just going through what's the science behind each. But I realized it's going to be out of date before it even comes out. I'm part of the U.S. News and World Report diet panel. So we get dozens of new diets I've never heard about every year that we have to go through. And I just realized, well, wait a second, that's not right. It's like whack-a-mole. Right. So instead, here's the criteria against which you can look at any future diet and see kind of where it would fall along this range. And then the second half of the book is, regardless of what you eat, there are, kind of tips and tricks that can, and tweaks that can get you to accelerate.
Right, like the water thing and focusing on nutritional density and caloric dilution, things like that.
Yeah, nutritional density, that's really the first part. That's part of a good weight loss diet. So weight loss techniques. But like the water, right? Water preloading. So if you drink 2 cups of water before eating a Whopper, you'll gain less weight. So it's regardless of what you eat. That's the whole second half. And the hope is people won't just kind of jump to the second half and actually do a safe, sustainable, nutritious, healthy diet. But
in terms of the foods to eat, though, it harkens back to the previous book, and it kind of orients around the Daily Dozen.
It ended up, it ended up that way, based on those criteria, like fiber-rich, low net sugars, low net fat, and water-rich, and obviously the same, vegetables, and kind of on down the list. And that was the criticism we got from the Daily Diet. The Daily Dozen app that we released, it's 1 million downloads, and there's 2 camps of criticism. One is, oh my gosh, too much food, I can't eat it all. In which case,
too
I'm like,
much
look,
food.
Oh my god, I can't go through all this
you gotta
stuff.
Make sure you get all of that.
Well, look, it's aspirational. It's just, and you can, make it a game and see how many you can get. If you don't do good one day, you can try better the next day. And that was actually I'm hoping to. After you checked off all those boxes, there's only so much room for pepperoni pizza at the end of the day. It's this kind of eat more approach, but it's really hoping to kind of push out some of the less healthy options. But the other group of criticisms came in and says enough calories. It's like, look, I'm training. There's no way I'm going to get enough calories eating this kind of stuff. I was like, well, look, this is the minimum. You can eat more food. I'm not saying this is all you can eat. I just want people to hit this. But then I realized, well, wait a second. Oh, too much food, too few calories? That sounds like a good weight loss diet. And the fact that these are some of the healthiest foods on the planet is a good bonus.
Right. Did you come across some interesting research on intermittent fasting? Because that seems to be the thing that a lot of people are talking about and thinking about and practicing right now. And I've had a couple people on the podcast speak to it.
That's the biggest chapter is the fasting chapter. So much information on it. We're looking at fasting because there's been a common interest for years. People ask me about it. And anytime, I only want to say I don't know once, ever. Even if it's the most esoteric question in the world, I want it, the next time someone asks me that, I'm going to know an answer to it. And so people ask me about fasting, and there just was no data. And so that's why, if there's a condition or food that you can't find on nutritionfacts.org, the number one reason is probably because there's just no good data out there. It's not like, I'm trying to ignore it. It's just like we don't know. And so, but just in the last few years, there's been an explosion of research into intermittent fasting, water-only fasting, 5-2, 25-5, time-restricted feeding, all these. And so, tremendous literature. And what's interesting about the intermittent fasting literature? Well, so in terms of intermittent fasting, no benefit in terms of compliance or lean mass conservation or weight loss compared to continuous caloric restriction, and the largest studies to date shows increase in cholesterol for people that have the same caloric restriction doing ultimate day modified fasting. And so I would encourage people not to do it, or at least get the cholesterol checked. But the time restricted feeding, where you try to narrow your eating window to 12 hours or less, and so you fast at least half a day. This was one of the research areas where there was diametrically opposed. Some studies show it's great for you. Other studies show it's terrible for you. It has all these negative metabolic consequences. And so it was my job to what is going on here? It turns out it's timing. Early versus late. So
when you break the fast.
So your window. Right. So if your window is late, you get the negative biological consequences of eating at night and shifting your calories towards later in the day. And so people that skip breakfast had these negative metabolic effects of time restricted feeding, whereas people that did early time restricted feeding not only got the chronobiological benefits of shifting their calories towards the beginning of the day, they also got the time restricted feeding benefits. And so that is really that's one of the things in the book that actually changed the way my family eats.
Yeah, you just rocked me with that, because I do it where I eat at night.
If you miss any meal, it should be supper, not breakfast.
Right. Breakfast is called break fast for a reason.
Yeah, I mean that, and
wow.
Yeah, I mean, and that actually may be one of the reasons that the 7-day Adventist vegetarians live the longest living population in the world, right? Okinawa Japanese was number 2. Now they're eating KFC. There's really only one blue zone that continues to this day. It's in Loma Linda, California. The 7-day Adventist vegetarians, longest living formally studied population in the world. But one of the reasons may be because they practice this early time restricted feeding, often skipping supper. The teachings of the church are, like 2 meals a day, and make lunch the biggest meal of the day. Hasn't been put to the test, but given all this short-term data, that's super interesting. I don't know. That'll be the next book, How Not to Age. I'll look deep into it.
Is it? Is that the next? It is.
Starting, January 2021. Wow. It'll be out December 22.
What's the book after that?
I think it's going to be How Not to Die from Cancer for Cancer Survivors. Unfortunately, the advice people with cancer diagnosis get is eat whatever you want, or just keep weight on, or whatever. Terrible advice. And now we actually have some decent data on cancer survival, not just prevent. How not to die, how to prevent cancer. What if you already have cancer? What can we do to slow down, stop it? So that'll be nice. And then I'm going to do
How Not to Age. That's a good one. I just had David Sinclair in here the other day.
Great.
I got Dan Buettner coming back here tomorrow.
Nice.
So I'm all about the longevity,
for me.
anti-aging stuff. That's super interesting. I think the work that David is doing, obviously that's in the genetic field. It's not nutrition per se, but I think there's so much emerging science that's happening right there. It's pretty fascinating.
In fact, there was this one seminal paper that really inspired me to write the whole book. And that was basically the big pharma got together the top researchers in the world, flew them to some luxury resort somewhere. And so Sinclair was there, and Longo, and everybody who's anyone in the field got paid enough money to all come together to list the most potentially the most druggable longevity pathways in the body. Like if we wanted to make a longevity drug, how would we do it? Right. So they all sat down. They came up with these 5 biochemical pathways for longevity. And look at these. Wait a second. Every single one of these we can modify the body. And so we're talking about like mTOR and IGF-1 and all that. Wait a second. We can all these, So I was like, oh, it's like that's the whole book. Like one chapter on each. We can, And so I'm really excited about it.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, very cool.
So I imagine you probably get this from time to time. Dr. Greger, love the new book, but I got to tell you, I've been on the keto diet, I've lost all this weight, I feel good, or I'm on the carnivore diet, I'm on this diet, I'm on that diet. So, you can't tell me that your way is better than my way.
Right, and I can say, let's see your lab work, or let me see your arteries, let me see your calcium score, let me see,
Blood work doesn't mean anything. That's a sort of common retort from the low-carb carnivore camp that the blood work is misleading because it doesn't necessarily mean what it says.
Well, I mean, if you have science to support that, but that's not what the science shows. So, there's, presidential advisory from the American Heart Association when it came out, because of these crazy myths out there, that they have to write these papers saying, yes, saturated fat's bad for you, yes, coconut oil is bad for you, and yes, LDL is a leading predictor of heart disease. Things that have been settled science for decades, but in the internet age of flat earthers, we have to come out and explicitly say it. Right. And so, and we don't just have short-term biomarkers. We have large populations of people who follow diets even trending in that direction, living significantly shorter lives.
It is interesting that the carnivore diet has caught the attention of so many people and seems to be like a trending thing right now.
It's like if an internet troll were a diet, it would be the right. It's just like the right. But look, you can imagine someone with food intolerance, whether it's celiac disease or anything.
Right, it's the ultimate elimination diet.
It's an elimination diet, right? And so people go on elimination diets. Typically you put someone on water, sweet potatoes, and tapioca, and then all of a sudden their joints feel better, they have more energy, all of a sudden their chronic indigestion goes away, okay, and then you add back, what was it about your diet that was causing a problem? And so it's the same thing. You're just basically excluding. And so if you did have some kind of intolerance, well then, but obviously then you want to add healthy foods back into your diet to find out what it is, and so you don't make
One of the things that I've been contending with in the last couple of years, I've been plant-based for 13 years now, is the fact that now there is this proliferation of amazing tasting plant-based analogs to every food imaginable, right? And it all tastes great. And I'll find myself indulging in that a little bit more than I should, and kind of selling the lie to myself, like, oh, it's plant-based, it's cool, and knowing, of course, like, this isn't the healthiest thing, this is not Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen,
Right.
And then I follow that up with another kind of layer of denial, which is that because I'm an athlete, that I can kind of outrun it, I can burn it off, and as long as I'm trim and I feel good, that I'm not necessarily paying the same toll that somebody else is. And I know that's not true, and so there's always like, yeah, I'm plant-based, but I can certainly iterate and evolve, to do better than I'm doing.
No, and right, it's a process. It's harder. But when I see, when I see an ad from Burger King bragging that it's 100% waffle, 0% beef, they're bragging that there's no beef in their new burger. That just speaks to me to the tremendous surge in interest in plant-based.
Of course, I don't mean to be
right. No, but when I say but nutritionally, right, you look at these things, often more sodium, use the coconut oil base, as much more saturated fat even sometimes. So these are not healthy foods, step in the right direction, stepping stone foods, I like to call them. Not everyone could go, kale quinoa overnight. But transition foods to get people in the direction of eating healthy. So I see that as a tremendously kind of optimistic social phenomenon, but my concern is that people will stop there. People will just kind of switch over their milkshakes, their cheeseburgers and milkshakes, and then stall there and not capture the full benefits of plant-based.
Yeah, it's never been easier to eat vegan. You can go to Burger King and get fries and a burger, and you can then go get coconut ice cream and knock yourself out, and then wonder, how come I'm not losing weight? How come I'm getting fatter?
I moved to Philly recently. There are multiple all vegan donut shops. Like, which all vegan donut shop do you want to go? That's right. And so you can have terrible vegan diet.
I know that if I'm eating whole food plant-based and I'm adhering to that pretty strictly, that I don't really have to, like, the idea of needing to diet, I don't have to worry about it, right? So, I know, that's tricky, right? How to diet not, as you would say. would have resettled it. So knowing that, then it is how not to diet, and yet it is a program that extends beyond just eat these foods. Like you have these strategies and things to kind of accelerate that aspect of it.
Right, and because I wanted to, I mean, there's so much kind of nutritional noise and nonsense out there. I just wanted there to finally be not only an evidence-based diet book, but some thousands of studies digging up every possible, tip, trick, tweak, technique, proven to accelerate the loss of body fat to people with every possible advantage, and kind of, build an optimal weight loss solution from the ground up. Basically, my criteria is if it's been proven to cause weight loss and it's not, I had a low bar, but I don't have a chapter on which cigarettes are best to smoke. And we know nicotine is proven, But so I say, look, we can eat nicotine-containing foods and maybe get some benefits. But and there were some things I actually cut out. Like there was a licorice root chapter I took out because the therapeutic index of you can get too much licorice really easily and hurt yourself. But so there's some things. There's some base level of safety. But beyond that, if it caused weight loss in a randomized control trial, it's in the book, and I want to give people every possible kind of advantage. Since that's where I became this kind of 21 tweaks thing to add on to their daily dozen. Now they've got 40 check marks every day. If you really wanted to go all out.
So if somebody comes to you and says, listen, I'm 50, 60 pounds overweight, I gotta drop this weight, my life hangs in the balance, how do you kickstart that person? Walk me through, if you had 5 or 10 minutes to speak to this person, how do you kind of get them sorted and on the way?
Yeah, so get them the right information, right? I could show them the app, Dr. Beer's Daily Dozen, free app. Obviously, everything I do, everything I produce is available free. And then, tell them about something like 21-day Kickstart program from PCRM, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. First of every month, it's totally free. A bunch of different languages, hundreds of thousands of people have done it. You do this kind of social media group together, and advice and tips and things like that. Again, just to stick with it long enough so you can see the benefits yourself, and then it's no longer some doctor wagging the finger at you. You have the internal motivation to stick with it. It feels so much better. Your digestion's better. Your sleep's better. Your energy's better. Oh, and you're losing weight, without.
Right. What are some of the crazier turnaround stories that you've heard or experienced?
Oh, the most exciting thing is diseases for which there's nothing in the literature that suggests it's possible. So people come to me and say, I have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, hypothyroidism, and I tell them you're going to be on thyroid hormone replacement the rest of your life. Your thyroid's all scarred up, it's over. And we can help prevent it. And they say, no, I had it, I diagnosed, I was on this for years, and then I went plant-based, and all of a sudden I'm off my thyroid medication. Here's my TSH, here's my lab values. And I tell them, your doctor has to write you up as a case study. I want to see this published, and I'll do a video about it. Someone comes to me with ankylosing spondylitis and one of these, horrible inflammatory autoimmune diseases. And I'm like, look, we have great data on Crohn's and multiple sclerosis and ulcerative colitis and other similar rheumatoid arthritis, similar inflammatory. I'm not surprised it helps with your disease, but there hasn't been anything published yet. And so, quick, we got to get you. We have to. It doesn't exist in the scientific world unless it's published in peer-reviewed scientific literature, and so I encourage them to get it out there. And actually, there was just a case series on ankylosing spondylitis and etc. But you expect that I no longer have diabetes, I no longer have heart disease. All these things, and teary-eyed, and they're out of their wheelchair, they're walking again. They have their lives back, they have a future again. That old hat. That's what I've been seeing for years. But what some of these new, where someone says, I have some disease I have to look up, and help with that too. He said, wait a second, it's a little snake oily panacea, right? That's a red flag when someone says, my thing can help with X, Y, and Z. But you realize, look, we're talking about a diet that improves arterial health. Every single one of our organs needs blood flow to get rid of waste products, get oxygen and nutrients. And so no wonder that a heart-healthy diet is a brain-healthy diet, is a liver-healthy diet, is a kidney-healthy diet, right? And a plant-based diet a whole food plant-based diet is basically synonymous with an anti-inflammatory diet. And since inflammation plays a role in so many chronic diseases, no wonder an anti-inflammatory diet is going to help kind of across the board with all these things. So there's these kind of underlying, mechanisms by which you can imagine. And look, even someone will ask me, what if, does it work for disease, Z, that, and I say, well, I don't know, but healthy diet can only help, right? I mean, look, and probably people with disease Z probably still die of heart disease, number one, right? So, for example, breast cancer, postmenopausal breast cancer, number one killer of older women with breast cancer, heart disease, still kills them more than breast cancer. And so, whether or not a whole plant-based diet reverses breast cancer, you're still more likely to die from heart disease, and we know we can reverse heart disease. So, of course, everyone with breast cancer, of course, everyone should be on this healthy diet. And then, if there's side benefits, well, then great. I mean, as we see with prostate cancer and some other conditions.
Well, when you look at like what you said, I mean, what's killing people? Heart disease, stroke, obesity. In terms of brain health, Alzheimer's is exploding right now, and to the extent that you're eating in a way that's improving arterial function and reducing inflammation,
right,
the downstream domino impact of that, has all kinds of positive consequences.
Even if it doesn't help, it helps. Right? Even if it doesn't help that particular thing,
That's like that meme of what if it turned out that global warming is a hoax? We just improved the planet for no reason,
Right, right. I mean, well, does stopping smoking help this disease? I don't know, but it's probably a good idea to stop smoking, right? I mean, it's just kind of.
What is a day in your personal life with food? Like, how do you make it work?
Well, my travel years.
Travel years. And how do you deal with the airports and all of that?
Yeah, airport food courts. Yeah, well, look, it's getting easier. Now you can get, brown rice in an airport. I mean, that's great. Like these, fast casual places. Things you never expect to see before. And look, there's, I've grown, if I can, land someplace and find Whole Foods and have a hot bar and I can grab some food and, first few days I have snacks and then slowly it's all gone. You know what I've been doing recently is we tell the organizers to go. There's only so many microwaves.
Put it in the rider.
There's only so many sweet potatoes I can get on my plane.
He's the guy with the crazy rider.
Right.
What does he think? He's Van Halen?
Not only no green M&Ms, no M&Ms. Period. It's all right. And so look, I need to, and typically I don't even have time. Even if I could, even if there's healthy food around, here I am, Southern California, I can get healthy food, but I don't have time. I mean, it's just.
And on the rare days that you're at home.
Oh, now then, once I have control over my life.
I love how excited you are.
And no, that's a beautiful thing. This is my first day of this few-week stint, and so I'm feeling the leaving home thing. It was hard to get up this morning, but then I can eat this beautiful. Oh my! And it's like a game. Like, how healthy can I get? I mean, it's really. And you know what helped? So I do a lot of food delivery, like home food delivery, and then you're not even tempted to buy junk because it's not in front of you. And so it's like everything I eat. So my house just has healthy food. And so if you get hungry enough, you're gonna eat an apple, right? I mean, there's nothing else. You will eventually eat that apple, right? And so with only healthy stuff, I can build up my healthy immune system.
Always making the healthy choice the most convenient.
Right. Oh yeah, I could go out in a Philadelphia winter and bike someplace to get something, to bike to the donut shop. But so much easier when I have a fridge full of yummy food.
And do you prepare stuff ahead of time?
I do a lot of batch cooking. Yeah. Particularly now, I'm doing a lot of this prebiotic mix. I talked about when I'm studying improving your microbiome, so the big microbiome chapter in the diet book, and just learning how important microbiome is and where the most concentrated source of prebiotics is. I discovered sorghum for the first time. I discovered all these weird millets that I had no idea that have poorly digested starch, and so they are fed to animals. But poorly digested starch is exactly what we want because it's poorly digested in our small intestine, makes it down to our lower intestine, where our good gut bugs can have a bounty of prebiotics, and then has all those knock-on benefits. And so that's the kind of thing where I just instant pot a huge amount and just Tupperware in the fridge, and take out one every day since it's over. So I always have my intact grains and a whole bunch of black lentils, and then it's a matter of just getting greens in the house.
What else did you learn about the gut biome in prepping for this
What's
book?
neat is now we have these interventional trials. So we've always known you can. So Flashback a few years ago, it was a black hole, almost no pun intended, where because most gut bugs are actually unculturable in laboratory conditions. Like we can't grow them outside of the human colon. We don't know what their gas. We don't know, and so it was black bug. We had no idea what was going on there until we had genetic fingerprinting techniques, and all of a sudden, for the first time, we'd be like, oh. Okay, we can actually track people's microbiome all the time, compare people's different microbiome, and we can correlate diseases with different bugs in our gut, and change people's diets, change the microbiome, see the beneficial or adverse effects. But that's the problem. If you improve someone's diet, all of a sudden you give people lots of whole grains and legumes, and beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils, lots of prebiotics. They get these beneficial changes in their microbiome, and all of a sudden they have amazing health benefits. Yeah, but you just fed them a whole bunch of healthy food. How do we know microbiome has anything to do with it? That's where fecal transplants come along, right? Then we can prove it's the microbiome because we can take those gut bugs and put it into somebody who's continuously the crappy diet and see if we can get those same metabolic benefits. And that's what we're seeing. So we're seeing, someone gets a fecal transplant for someone who's overweight. All of a sudden they start packing on pounds eating the same food. Or there's
That's crazy.
mental health changes, all sorts of crazy things. And now we can prove it's the gut bug. Now, what happens is, of course, it's temporary because, you infuse the gut bugs, but then you keep starving them by not eating any fiber, and then they die away. But you see, initially, those same benefits. Of course, you got to feed those gut bugs, so they're going to die off. But so what went from a correlation science, now we have a causation science, and it's just fascinating that we can transfer the benefits of a healthy diet. So the black market rich roll stool, could
Start selling that shit.
Exactly. I mean, who wouldn't pay?
It is fascinating. I mean, the links to cravings as well. Like the nature of the gut flora impacts the foods that you crave.
Yeah.
And it also, I think, is because it's so complex that it's rife for confusion and people kind of making claims about what you should and you shouldn't do that we don't necessarily have the ability to really back up at this point.
And particularly this kind of personalized nutrition. Like people all the time are sending me things. I sent my stool sample in to this company and gave me back a thing and said I should be eating this and I shouldn't be eating this. We don't have that kind of granularity. It does not. Same thing with DNA testing, right? People that get back their genome and say, oh well, whatever. I shouldn't be eating X, Y, and Z. We don't have that kind of.
But is it true we should be eating fermented foods and we should be eating, a variety of nutritionally dense foods to be kind of seeding that gut flora with a diversity of bacteria?
So it's the three, right? It's prebiotics, probiotics, and polyphenols, which are these kind of tend to be brightly colored pigments in fruits and vegetables. These are kind of the three things that benefit a good microbiome. And you can use all three of them or just two of them. I mean, the problem with probiotics is you take them and then they just die off. You don't continue to eat healthy. And so if you just have like antibiotic-associated diarrhea or something right by your gut bugs, then I see a therapeutic role of something like probiotics. But otherwise, taking probiotics is useless because they'll just die off. If you put them in the same environment that didn't grow good gut bugs in the first place, putting in some good acidophilus, they're just going to die off because you're not feeding the acidophilus. Because good gut bugs are by definition fiber feeders, resistant starchy. That's what makes good gut bugs grow. And so what we really need is we just need to feed our good gut bugs prebiotics. And people are like, oh, I eat so many fruits and vegetables. But let's realize fruits and vegetables are almost all water. Like, fruits are like 80% water, or some water vegetables 95% water. They're water in vegetable form. Not actually a lot of fiber. You can actually have a pretty fiber deficient diet if you're not including whole grains and legumes, some of these drier foods into your daily diet.
Wow. That's good to know. Because I just thought, well, as long as I'm eating a lot of high fiber foods, like I'm basically taking care of my prebiotic needs.
Right. But it's actually not. So fruits and vegetables are not high. I mean, they're high fiber foods compared to what 99% of the population eats. But if you're really trying to build 70 grams a day, 80 grams a day, or like 120 grams, which is how we probably evolved, based on human coprolites and fossilized feces. then, I mean, and you do the math, people don't even close. So, Ornish, really healthy, whole food plant-based diet, you got like 60. Which is, average about 15, recommended minimum is about 30, and so getting 60, but I mean, that's a remarkably healthy diet to shoot up there. And then these population studies where they have essentially no heart disease, no diabetes, no breast cancer, no, like sub-Saharan Africa, half century ago, they were getting, the triple-digit fiber consumption every day. And so part of that benefit may actually have been the microbiome, and that was the benefit of as opposed to cholesterol.
Right. More will be revealed though. Like there's got to be like lots of crazy studies being performed right now.
Oh, fascinating. No, and so there are vegan fecal transplant studies. What can will you give someone they do it through tubes, they do it through capsules. You just don't want to burp after that, that kind of thing.
Do you know Robin Shutkan, Dr. Robin Shutkan? She's a DC physician who specializes in the microbiome, and she was on the show a long time ago, but she was predicting not only fecal transplants becoming like a booming business, but actual spas, like high-end spas where you could go and have your artisanal transplants.
Right. What do you want them to eat for the week before you show up?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I want them right. That's funny. Oh, that's great.
Well, let's shift gears. I want to talk about sitting for a minute because you did some interesting stuff here on the book around that. I know we're sitting but sitting is unless you're on an airplane or in a car.
I'm stuck my butt all day on a plane. There's this myth that sitting's the new smoking. Not by any stretch of the imagination. At least 10 times more deadly to smoke than to sit. But prolonged sitting, defined typically over 6 hours a day, is associated with increased mortality. Even if you then go out to the gym and work out hard for an hour a day after work. So it does. That helps, but doesn't completely counterbalance the fact that you're sitting all day. We think a lot of that has to do with the venous stasis, the coagulability of the blood, the fact that you're not actually having movement of blood through your veins in your lower legs, affects endothelial function and affects your systemic arterial tree. But even something like bobbing your knee up and down has been shown to completely eliminate those effects.
That's wild.
And they have someone just bob one knee up and down versus the other, and you can measure the differences in what's going on in their legs, and that is what's correlated with this increased cardiovascular disease morbidity and mortality. So there's a way. So even if you're a truck driver, even if you're stuck inside all day sitting down, there are things you can do. And so there's all sorts of. I go through all the various different little bars and things that you put on your desk, and which ones work, which ones are just fads. And so there are ways you can counterbalance the effect, or you can do a standing desk, walking desk. I love getting back to my walking desk. I'm addicted to the thing.
Wasn't there a study that you looked at where they put people on basically a standardized amount of calories every day and said you can exercise this much, and there was a difference in between some of them lost weight, some of them didn't, and it came down to how much they were sitting, and then there was this realization that there are certain people that are walking around all the time kind of casually throughout the day, and they were having amazing benefits that the people who were just eating the same and working out the same who were sitting more weren't able to realize.
Yeah, these neat benefits, right? These non-exercise thermogenesis.
Right.
So what they realized is that we typically, it's this whole calories in, calories out, and you ask people what matters, and people actually either say they're the same or calories out matters more, and that's completely not true. We have almost total control over calories in. In fact, we can eat nothing. Although in calories out, typical exercise, like casual exerciser, it's only like 5% of calories out. Most of our calories out are energy-intensive brains. Most wild animals, movement is their number one calories out. For us, it's our brains. We can lie down in bed, chained to a bed all day, still burn over 1,000 calories. And so that's why it's so hard to outrun a bad diet, because even a moderately obese person, moderately intensely exercising for an hour burns 350 calories. I mean, most snacks, drinks, processed foods have like are consumed at 70 calories a minute. So 5 minutes eating just wiped out a whole hour of exercise. That's why it's so difficult. But what they learned is because and so there's a like a 60% slice that's just like basal metabolic activity, keeping your breathing, your heart pumping, your brain going. And then there's a small sliver, unless you're a mountain climber or an army ranger or something really doing intense exercise, you just have a small fraction of voluntary exercise. But then there's this non-exercise thermogenesis, which is fidgeting, which is just moving around, walking around, standing rather than sitting. And so now we have these accelerometers we can put on people, and so really revolutionized our understanding of where these calories are going. And why you put people on the same calorie diet, the same enforced exercise schedule, and some people lose vastly more amounts of weight than others. And most of that had to do. It's not like some people just had metabolic slowing or there's some biochemical thing going on. No, it was the amount of this kind of typical kind of exercise, where you're setting out a half an hour to do any kind of exercise. It was just that they're just moving around more during the day. And so how can we enforce that? Well, being at a standing desk, you have postural muscles, otherwise you collapse to the floor. Anything you can do to get you to just move yourself more and, bouncing your knees, that kind of stuff.
I mean, that dovetails pretty perfectly with the Blue Zone's findings, right? That these people that live so long and live so healthy are people that are just kind of in constant low-grade motion throughout the day.
Right, they're not going to the gym, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just not, we're built to move. That's what some of the sitting data suggests.
What about the person who has struggled to lose weight their whole life, and no matter what they do, they just continue to gain, or they can't, they stay at a certain point? Is there validity to this being hormonal or an endocrine problem? You hear people say like, oh, it's my genetic makeup, or I just have a slow metabolism.
Right. So there are some conditions. So, for example, hypothyroidism, it does slow down your metabolism by about 15%. And indeed, it's just it's harder for them to lose weight. But there's no such thing as someone who's basically obesity resistant. There are people who claim no matter what I eat, even if I don't eat anything, I gain weight or don't lose weight. And so scientists lock them in a lab. And when you do that, everybody, there's never been a single published case, they lose weight, in fact, exactly as they should in terms of body fat. Some of them, and this is where this comes from, start retaining water, such that they lose no weight after not eating for 4 days. And so the bathroom scale says they haven't lost a pound, but if you actually do CT scans, DEXA scans, actually see what's going on inside their body, they're losing body fat exactly as predicted, but they're retaining all this water. And then finally, when the diuresis happens, all of a sudden they plunge down and match exactly onto the curve. But it can take days for you to reach that. And so you can imagine people who are like, I'm starving myself for literally days, not losing a pound. There's something wrong with me. No, you are actually losing body fat every single day. It's just your scale doesn't tell you what compartments you're losing that weight in.
Wow. That's interesting, because I feel like that does come up quite a bit. People, will say, just, there's something different about my genetic makeup that makes me immune from these positive experiences that other people have.
So they just have to give enough time.
Yeah. One of the things that I hear quite frequently is, Rich, I've been listening to you, I read your book, blah, 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 whatever, I saw the movies. I went plant-based for a while, and now I'm pretty much there. But I went back to some fish and a little bit of meat here and there. So I'm kind of 90% in your direction. Like, is that good? Like, how does the evidence and the science break down in terms of somebody who is predominantly plant-based? I guess the word plant-based, how do you define that? If you're plant-based, it doesn't mean you're plant perfect or you're plant 100%. What is the difference between somebody who is, adhering to, your optimal protocol versus the person who is indulging in a little bit of meat and dairy products on the side?
I think the body has remarkable ability to bounce back from insults. In fact, that's what this heart disease reversal data shows. is that you can eat a lifetime of this horrible food, and then even, I mean, the average age is like in the 60s, some of these reversal studies, and even after a lifetime of that, you can clean out there. His body was just waiting for you to stop, attacking your arteries with these foods, and you can rapidly reversal, and you get more reversal the more compliance you get. But the compliance wasn't perfect in most of these studies. And so people were eating those kind of 90% type diets and seeing the remarkable benefits. It's like there's no study in the world that suggests someone who's like a social smoker who picks up a few cigarettes at a party once a year is going to have any greater, lung cancer risk than someone who doesn't smoke at all. Of course, we tell people don't smoke at all because we're afraid this is going to lead down that path. And some people are easier or ironically more compliant with strict rules, black and white rules. So if you're like, there's no cheese in the house versus a little cheese in the I'm just going to have a little bit. The concern, I think, with a lot of these plant-based physicians who are like absolutely strict, zero, we don't want you to eat any of this. It's not that the science supports we need that level of compliance to get the benefits, but the concern is that you'll slip back down to your old ways. I mean, so it's a psychological. It's easier for an alcoholic to completely be teetotaler than this.
Yeah, trust me. I mean, a couple observations on that. I mean, I certainly fall into that camp. Like, I have to have ardent, strict rules around this stuff because if I, partake a little bit, that just opens the door for more. Like, I just know myself well enough to know, like, if I could have a little bit of cheese here and there, that I could maintain that for a little while. But 6 months later, there'd probably be a lot more cheese happening.
So
like,
that would be right. That would be the harm. It wouldn't be that cheese once in a while. That would be the harm.
It's that it triggers. It basically keeps that craving alive, rather than allowing me to transcend it.
And it doesn't allow your taste buds to adapt, right? I mean, our taste buds have been so deadened by the hyper salty, hyper sweet, hyper fatty foods, such that natural foods don't taste any good. And so then you feel like some kind of aesthetic monk where you're just eating it. But give it a few weeks, and all of a sudden, the soup salted to taste weeks ago. We have these great studies. So it's actually too salty. You prefer lower salt soup. And the same thing happens with, but look, the ripest peach in the world tastes sour after a bowl of Fruit Loops, like natural food. But all of a sudden, you get to a point where if you get rid of all that crap, then all of a sudden, corn on the cob, no butter, no salt, tastes delicious, like natural, healthy, whole food. Then you get the best of both worlds. Wait a second. Tastes delicious and you get to live longer. That's what plant-based eating is all about. But you may never get there if you, have a little cheese here, a little cheese there. You maintain that
because you
palate.
can't make that. Yeah, exactly.
And then okay, I'm gonna be good. Eat that salad, and the salad doesn't taste like cardboard because it doesn't have the same kind of
Right. I know that to be true because I've experienced that in my life, but I think people hearing that think it's bullshit. Like they're like they can't believe that that's true. They're like, that sounds great, but there's no way.
Yeah, no, it's gotta have the face.
Yeah, and the other observation I have about this is that I don't think people are very good objective. They're not objective about what they're truly doing. Like when they say, "Oh, I'm having a little bit of this," or "I have a moderate amount of this." I think their perception of that moderation is generally, in my experience, completely out of whack.
No, in fact, there's a great study that I talked about in the new book, where and this is the reason why food industry loves moderation. They asked people what they thought a moderate amount of chocolate would be, moderate amount of processed meat, moderate amount. They go through all these foods, right? And what was the definition of moderate? Exactly how much they themselves were eating. No matter how much they were eating, that was defined as moderate based on their own intake. They're eating a chocolate bar every day, that's moderate intake. And so when the food industry says in moderation, that's basically giving people license to do exactly what they were doing before because everyone thinks that they're eating moderate amounts of bad food. Right. Amazing.
And it goes back to the psychology of all of this. It really isn't about the information. It's about people's emotional, baggage around all of this stuff. And I really think that is the biggest barrier. Like when somebody says I can't lose weight or whatever, there's a whole, package there that needs to be, really deconstructed in order to get that person, acclimated towards a new way of living and eating.
And I have a chapter in the book talking about those psychological. We have these glitches right? So I talk about in psychology literature, they call it the "what the hell" effect. That's the you eat one cookie and you eat the whole bag because well, I already screwed up, which makes absolutely no sense. You just take a step back. Wait a second. So I made one step away from what my plan. So I'm just going to go. That makes absolutely no sense. In fact, you eat that one, then you definitely shouldn't eat the whole. But our psychology goes in the absolute wrong direction. And the same thing. There's the flip side is making progress towards a goal actually gives people license to So losing weight 1 week. Is correlated with gaining weight the next way, right? But just the understanding of that, knowing that that's a glitch, that the hope is that you can catch yourself, right? And so I find myself, after some 4-hour book signing, the jet lag to heck, staring at whatever goodies are in my hotel mini bar, right? And have this, my first reaction is like, I deserve this. Like, oh my God, what I went through today. But then, I just, what the hell? This self-licensing. And I say, no, what I deserve, of course, is to be healthy. So, yeah.
I think momentum is underrated too. Once people get a little practice with this and they're starting to see even the smallest amount of positive result, then it really like enforces that drive to keep going, and it's almost like an insurance policy or a barrier against those kind of slips. And there's something mystical about that.
And that does argue towards the more, if you're going to try it, go all in. As opposed to the 80-90%, right? Well, if you're going to try like a free sample, right? That's what I used to tell my patients, right? Try like, look, you can eat anything for a few weeks, you can eat nothing for a few weeks. I mean, let's try it, let's go all in, just for, and because people can't stomach the thought of I'm never going to eat another pepperoni pizza the rest of my life. Like, it's just unthinkable. They're like, no, just a couple weeks, then we can go right back to eating whatever you want. Just give it a try. But the hope is that they go all in, they start to feel it. Right, so they're less painful periods, they're chronic migraines, whatever it is, such that then they have that internal motivation, even if they don't take advantage, and they do slip back to old ways, they know at least in the back of their mind, they know how good they could feel at any time if they just move in that direction, but you don't know how good you're going to feel till you give it a try.
What changes would you make to our system of healthcare if you were in charge? I mean, listen, nobody goes into medicine to just be a vehicle for diagnosis and prescription, but the system is set up to create a dynamic that forces medical practitioners into this kind of practice that, isn't really necessarily, I would imagine, what they thought they were signing up for.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, in fact, if you look at the mental health statistics of practitioners these days, particularly in the United States, this is not what we kind of signed up for, because most of what comes in the door, about 80% in primary care, are these chronic diseases for which we have very little to offer our patients in the kind of traditional medical model, right? We can slow down the rate at which you go blind, at which you lose your kidney function. We can slow down the rate at which, your arteries clog off by, prescribing these drugs, and we have a little time, so we give these prescriptions. But instead of giving them fully informed consent that, well, here's your other options that I don't have time to tell you about, and they work better, and the side effects. But, I mean, the system is set up to kind of reward bad behavior. The most profitable doctor visit in North America is the blood pressure check. Doctors love it. Everybody loves it. They bill for it. They come in. You're on a blood pressure medication. They come in and then you tweak the drug a little bit, and they come back. It's the easiest. You fit it in a few minutes. You get the bill for it, and it's the most common primary care visit. And for a condition that need not happen at all, it's a lifestyle disease. High blood pressure is a lifestyle disease. But that entire sector of the field would be gone. Both big pharma and big medicine. I mean, no one benefits from people eating healthier. I mean, if you go down the list, the junk food industry, name one industry that would benefit from people eating healthier. And you say, well, what about the health insurance industry? Don't they benefit from people eating, because they have to pay for it all? They get a slice of the pie. The bigger the pie, the bigger the slice. I mean, when I get to talk to these, healthcare executives at these conferences, first of all, they'll say, well, they're only going to be on my insurance for a few years. They're going to switch. People switch insurance so frequently. Why am I going to prevent their diabetes and have some other company benefit from my preventing their diabetes? And it's the pie. I mean, it's just so expensive and they get their cut, and the more expensive it is, the bigger the cut, and it's just the whole system is rigged kind of against us. The CEOs of junk food companies aren't sitting around trying to think of creative ways to contribute to the childhood obesity epidemic. They just need to make money for the shareholders. How do you do that? You don't do that selling something that goes bad, like produce, that you can't brand, you can't make it. You want a snack cake that sits on the shelf, right? I mean, the system is just set up to reward these behaviors that make people sick.
Yeah, so how do we change the incentivization so that we get more Robert Osfelds and Michelle McMackins who have created practices where they have follow-up and accountability, and they're providing that kind of extra level of care to help people make these lifestyle shifts? Like, there has to be an economic structure that makes it attractive for young doctors to enter into this.
Yeah. So it's reimbursement. That's Dean Ornish had this famous quote saying that he thought it was the research, but no, it's all about reimbursement. So he proved back in 1990, right, decades ago, you could reverse heart disease, #1 killer, and hundreds of thousands of people continue to die every year needlessly because the lifestyle purchase isn't reimbursed. And so yes, some people can fight against the buck the trend and find creative ways to like these shared medical visits where you can bill insurance. There's actually no technical maximum for the number of people you can get. So you can get 30 people in a room, and you can bill insurance for each of those 30 people and give the same little speech that you give for a group of diabetics or a group of people with obesity. And so that's one of the kind of ways that within the system, doctors will be able to get reimbursed. But we just need to change the incentives. Like, why do U.S. taxpayers subsidize by the billions the sugar industry, the corn syrup industry, the make cheap livestock feed for dollar menu burgers? Why are we paying $250 million to the sorghum industry? I'm buying some sorghum now because I love it, but I didn't even know about it a few months ago, right? No, it's all fed to livestock. And so, now you can argue we should be subsidizing, the government should be subsidizing foods, but if you're going to subsidize foods, how about subsidizing fruits and vegetables, making them cheaper, even free, and because then they'll have all sorts of knock-on benefits in terms of lower costs across the board.
Yeah, or taking those subsidies and channeling them into improving healthcare or creating those incentives.
But the controversy is on who's going to pay for healthcare, not what the fundamental healthcare is going to be. Right?
I think Ornish did create a reimbursable program, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Paid for, reimbursed by Medicare. There's 2 programs now, him and Pritikin. And I speak at hospitals. I speak at Ornish programs across the country. And that's often my into a medical system to kind of promote the program, saying that this option exists.
Yeah. Speaking of Pritikin, your entry point to this whole thing begins with Pritikin.
Yeah, amazing. Right, not a doctor. People always think a doctor. No, he was an engineer. Came from the outside, diagnosed with serious heart disease in his early 40s. And was basically told, go home and die. There's nothing we can do about it. Back then we didn't even have drugs, right? We couldn't even put anybody on anything. And people just get work for a person to die. Heart disease reversible? No. But then he looked around the world, found these populations. He was a data guy. He just went and said there's populations of the world that don't suffer from epidemic heart disease. Like, it's unknown. People just don't have heart attacks. In rural China, sub-Saharan Africa. Wait a second. What was it about these populations? He figured, maybe it's cholesterol, and started experimenting around how we can lower people's cholesterol, plant-based diet, and reversed, heart disease by the thousands. But back then we didn't have angiography. We didn't have this ability to visualize inside what the arteries were looking like. And so it was a clinical diagnosis. They had angina. They had such bad heart disease they couldn't walk up the steps. But you just had to trust that the patient had angina. And all of a sudden they go on a plant-based diet, and all of a sudden they're running marathons. And the response in the medical community is, well, you never had heart disease in the first place. If you had a heart disease, you wouldn't be running marathons. Well, it's because it was simple. But all of a sudden, what Ornish brought to the table is we can prove with some quantitative angiography, we can actually see the arteries open up, get bigger, improve blood flow, reversal, proof in black and white, published in some of the most prestigious medical journals in the world. But one of those people that Pritikin reversed their heart disease was Frances Greger, my grandmother, who, in a wheelchair after so many bypass surgeries, basically run out of plumbing. And there she was, and saw about Pritikin on 60 Minutes. Pritikin was featured on 60 Minutes, somehow made the cross-country trek one of his earliest patients. She's featured in Pritikin's biography, and she, they wheeled her in, and she walked out within a few weeks. She was walking 10 miles a day, went on to live another 31 years to age 96 after her medical death sentence at age 65, and that's what changed her whole family. I mean, now as a kid, this was all happened when I was, you go to the doctor, you get better. That's what doctors do, right? Little did I know what revolution back then. The thought that heart disease was reversible, completely revolutionary. Only later in life did I realize what had happened, what my grandma was part of.
Was Pritikin kind of perceived as a quack in his time?
Well, he was. He was putting doctors to shame because he knew the science. I mean, because he had read all the primary literature, and so would just demolish. There's actually some old YouTube of his debates. He would just demolish opponents because they thought they knew what they were talking about. Of course, they did. I mean, they were just the doctors. They weren't taught anything about nutrition. And so he was just kind of untouchable when he was actually presenting the science, but they didn't believe his results. His results were too miraculous, and he couldn't prove it beyond these amazing patient testimonials. But how far does that really go? It doesn't until we have good data to back it up.
And he inspired everything that you've done.
And then
right?
that's why I went to medicine.
Trigger.
That's why I started Nutrition Facts. That's why I wrote How Not to Die. That's why all the proceeds I received from all my books are donated to charity. I just want to do what for everyone's family, what Pritikin did for my family.
Right. Well, let's round this down. Maybe provide a few starting points for somebody that's listening to this. This information is totally new to that person. They're overweight. They're ready for a change. What's the first thing they do?
Go to your local public library, grab How Not to Diet, check it out, and nutritionfacts.org. All my work is free there. No ads, no corporate sponsorship, strictly non-commercial, not selling anything. Just put it up as a public service, as a labor of love, as a tribute to my grandma.
I like how you mentioned the library and not the bookstore.
Free! Books are free! Literally, in your neighborhood. They're just sitting there.
But if you had to tell them, like, look, I'm ready. I'm staring at my next meal. Like, what should I focus on? What are a couple foods or some like thumbnail, rules that I can wrap my head around?
Yeah. So there's 17 criteria which make for the first part of the book, like being rich in fiber, water-rich vegetables, things like that. That through calorie density mechanisms and improving microbiome health and etc. can achieve that satiety without calorie restriction or portion control. I mean, that's the magic of plant-based eating, as opposed to traditional weight loss approaches. Is that people are told to eat ad libitum, meaning eat as much as you want, and that's because you put people on a whole food plant-based diet, and you can slash 1,000 calories out of their daily diet, cut their caloric intake in half. They don't notice because they have these crazy. You put people on healthy enough diets, you just couldn't. Some foods impossible to overeat. 2,000 calories of strawberries, 44 cups of strawberries. You couldn't fit them all in your stomach. Like, that's just, there's, you know me. I go on and on.
No. Listen, man, I love you. I can go out and run really far distances, but I aspire to your level of energy. You know what I mean? Whatever you got, I want it. And you've been so inspiring to me in my journey, and I love the impact that you're having in the world, and it's massive. It's no small thing. You've devoted your life to this cause, and you've changed so many other people's lives, and it's to be commended. It's an honor to talk to you today.
Well, you know what? I hear beyond just documentaries. I heard you on the Rich Roll podcast, and that's why it changed my life. And that's why I'm here.
Good, man. Come back again sometime.
Anytime.
And you're going to speak at a hospital tonight?
That's right. Where am I going?
What's the pitch? You don't even know. Do you know what state you're in?
I just looked down at my phone and I'm going to the airport. I wonder where. Yeah.
What's the pitch at the hospital tonight?
We're going to do weight loss. We're going to do weight loss.
Good. All right, my friend. Let's get you out of here. Peace. Lance.
Do you want to learn to draw professionally? At least that, right?
Well, no. So canola's better in terms of omega-3 ratio.
Oil that's higher in omega-3s, you know, if you've
Oh yeah. And omega-6, which are also really crappy processed oils, is a safflower oil. Safflower, sunflower, what's the other? Corn oil, and then there's a fourth really high. Safflower, sunflower.
Yeah, I was under the impression that olive had a decent amount, or you know, at least that ratio.
Well, no. So canola's better in terms of omega-3 ratio, but some are just really high. Yeah, some really high. But again, if you're just using a little bit and you're eating lots of flaxseed and walnuts, and it doesn't really.
So what do you think about then, like flax oil or something like that, or is that?
Oh, well, no. I mean, so flax oil. I mean, so the omega-3s are so sensitive that's why you have to put flaxseed oil in the fridge. It goes rancid, etc. Whereas, and this is really remarkable, you can take milled flax seeds, ground flax seeds, with the breaking out that nice hard natural hull, opening it up at room temperature for 6 months in an airtight container, and there's no detriment in ALA, there's no rancid. I mean, it's really remarkable that in the whole food form, even when it's ground up, exposed, I mean, still retains its nutrition, doesn't go rancid. Whereas the oil, a couple days, you just couldn't do that.
I wonder if there's some just like thing you could add. Maybe there's a chemical in that ground flax that's preventing it from oxidizing or whatever's happening, right? Add it to the oil.
Presumably it's the antioxidants, right? I mean, if we're worried about oxidation, it's just packed with antioxidants. And so, in fact, that's what preservatives are, like BHA, BHT, these artificial preservatives. They're antioxidants. They're artificial antioxidants. They're antioxidant chemicals that just mop up free radicals.
So we should just be taking baths in these chemicals every morning when we wake up. Just jump into the tub. Antioxidant bath. Nice. Well, let's move on a little bit. Here's an interesting one. I have mentioned this on my channel a few times, and you've had videos hinting at this, that the idea that leucine can, increase IGF-1, mTOR, so forth. And I think it was Rafael Pinto here asking, would that in plant-based form have a problem, like a protein powder with leucine? Do we have the same issue there?
Yeah, you could have the same issue. So that's why, I mean, so high enough soy protein consumption, for example, you can get a bump in IGF-1. I mean, the study's been done.
Yeah, the 3 to 5.
I mean, there's nothing magical. I mean, the reason that your body can tell the difference between plant protein, typical plant protein, and typical animal protein, is the amino acid profile. And there's some so-called high-quality proteins, high-quality plant proteins, meaning kind of similar in ratio to your own human proteins, that cause that same kind of, anabolic kind of reaction, and soy is one of them. So actually, ironically, the benefits of eating quote-unquote low-quality proteins, maybe in terms of longevity, in terms of methionine, leucine. I have some videos coming up on branched-chain amino acids and their detrimental effects on glucose homeostasis.
Interesting, yeah, because I made a video about how BCAAs are kind of have that potential dangerous, and that you get over that 3 to 5, it's like 4 grams of leucine. That could be an issue, but I was very speculative, so I wasn't sure. All right, let's move on to one talking about some animal products a little bit. I actually made a video talking about what you said, where the dairy leaching the calcium from the bones because it's acidic was a myth, and then someone came right to me and was like, "Hey, the author of this study is actually a speaker for the dairy industry, is very pro-dairy." And so what are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, look, just because someone has financial conflict of interest doesn't mean that what they're saying is wrong.
Yeah.
So when someone works for the nut industry, comes out with a nuts are good study, yeah, you look at it with a little like, oh well, maybe they created the study in a way to give a false forward. Maybe they shelved studies that didn't have the right things they wanted.